and welcome to a brand new show of Market Makers. My guest on the show today is Chetan of Morgan Stanley. Chetan, I just read a strategy report and looks like you've written a perfect obituary for Indian economy.
I think that's a very, I think that's an incorrect description of what we are saying, but I think definitely it's a difficult time that we are going to go through in India right now.
You're using the word stagflation, which means high inflation, low growth. Are we staring at that kind of a scenario for Indian economy?
It's a 4-quarter outlook. I think eventually we'll get out of it, but in the near term what we see is that's probably the base case outcome, where inflation will take much longer to come down and growth will continue to remain weak. And that's why we describe that as a stagflation type environment that we are getting into.
Indian policymakers are of the view that whatever is happening in India has a global linkage, but your view is entirely different.
Yeah, I would say that probably the 75% of whatever is happening to our macro data points is owing to what we have done domestically, and probably about 25% is what has happened because of globally. So yes, a lot of the stuff is going wrong on the ground here.
When you say domestically we've not got our act together, what are the missing parts of the puzzle?
Our story has been very simple, that India has been having this bad growth mix, which is reflected in this persistent high level of fiscal deficit. At a consolidated level, we are running fiscal deficit of 9 to 10% until March 12. And at the same time, the productive part, which is private investment, has been going down. So private investment has been down from peak of 17 to about 11.5 first in March 09, and then it has hovered around that. It went up for a year and it's been in the range of 11%. So a big dip in private investment, which is what keeps your productive pie growing, is weakening. And high level of fiscal deficit, which is the unproductive part of it, and it continues to weigh at that high level of 9 to 10%. So that's the real reason why we are having this difficult macro environment in India.
At a time when most other large governments are running high levels of deficit, is there something wrong in running a deficit in India?
I think we are a young workforce, and we need to ensure that we find productive jobs for that young population. And how do you do that? That is done by lifting your investment to GDP higher. If we do that, we have a virtuous cycle. We saw that in 2004 to 7, private investment to GDP kept going up, fiscal deficit to GDP kept going down. And when you change the mix in this manner, it brings us to a virtuous cycle of more jobs, higher income growth, higher saving, higher investments, and even more jobs. And that is the perfect cycle that we want, because we are seeing continuous addition to the working age population. So for us, it is very important to have private investment going up. If we don't do that, the cost of it will come in form of lower growth rate, and that will also have effectively a loss of social and economic welfare.
So do you worry more about a drop in the investment cycle or a drop in the saving rate?
It's connected. I mean, the reason why investment to GDP is going down is because the saving is going down. So we're trying to retain our growth rates higher than what even the savings are permitting, because that is reflected in higher current account deficit. Saving minus investment is equal to current account deficit. So saving is going down, and investment are going down at a slower pace than saving, and we're trying to protect our growth rate at some level. But that is resulting into higher current account deficit and additional challenges. So even the current level of investment doesn't look like it's supported by our saving, and it may actually have to go down further. An ideal thing would be that the government gets the message out of this situation and says, okay, I'm going to increase the public saving by cutting deficit, reduce the current account deficit, and allow that investment rate to be at that level.
Chetan, I guess the prescription is easy, but what about the intention or implementation, the kind of political setup we are in, and with the way inflation or food inflation in the country is still high, do you think it will be impossible for the current government to implement anything which is proactive?
I wouldn't say it's impossible. We've seen gasoline price increase. So there is a possibility that post the president's election, you will see some action. They have indicated that in the media comments, which you guys have put out, that there is their intention to work on it. But I would say that it is not just one thing of doing diesel price hike by 10%, which is going to be the magic wand. It will have to be a series of steps continuously in a rapid manner over a period of next 3 to 4 months if we want to salvage the situation and limit the damage. Otherwise, we will actually be staring at a much longer duration of low growth, and that will have its attendant consequences.
So you will not be surprised for FY13 if we get a sub 5% print on the GDP?
Right now, I wouldn't want to speculate that. Our base case is 5.8%, and I'll stick to that. I would accept that there is downside risk to that number.
How did you arrive at that number of 5.8%? What was the thinking behind this number?
So the thinking behind it is that, as I described, the ideal way is that the government cuts the deficit, and that will reduce consumption, and there will be weaker growth. But what it looks like is the government is not working through that route, but letting the investment slip, because higher deficit is leaving cost of capital high, and cost of capital high is taking the investment down. And so we have pulled down our investment growth assumptions even further, and that's how brought down the growth rates to 5%, 5.8%, sorry. And the other aspect is that the world is continuing to be in a difficult position. So if you look at the export growth numbers, they have weakened, and we've seen that across the region. So India is not any different, and that is not going to help us either. So the global environment continues to be also quite challenging.